My dad looked me in the eyes and said, "Your money can't buy my respect," after I handed him a gift on his birthday. So I replied, "No, but my money buys a roof over your head and food on your table. Please remember that." My dad is 61. This old-school accountant, 41 years at the same firm, never took more than a week off. The type who thinks missing work for your kid's graduation makes you soft. Dude built his entire identity around being the guy who suffers in silence and brings home just enough to keep the lights on while complaining about how hard he works. Growing up with him meant living under his weird code. Real men don't complain. Real men sacrifice. Real men earn respect through suffering. Anything else meant you were weak and pathetic. I was always the disappointment in his eyes. Went into tech right after college instead of putting in my dues at some soul-crushing firm like he wanted. Started making serious money by 25. By 29, I was clearing more in a month than he made in a quarter, and he effing hated it. Never said it outright, but it bled through every little comment he threw. He wasn't the yelling type, just death by 1,000 jabs. Must be nice sitting at a computer all day. Tech jobs won't last. Your sister's doing real work. Always that tone, like I was playing pretend while real adults handled the hard stuff. He'd be checking the stock prices of tech companies that had bad quarters just so he could smirk and say, "See House of Cards." Meanwhile, I was building enterprise security systems that Fortune 500 companies were paying 7 figures for. Ah, yes. My sister, 29, female. Megan, the golden child, became a nurse, makes about $58,000 a year, and Dad acts like she's carrying the weight of the world. She's respectful, plays by his rules, calls every Sunday. She's the grounded one, the loyal one, the one who understands real life. The hilarious thing is that I funded her nursing degree, paid off her student loans when she graduated. Dad never knew I made her promise not to tell him. She was grateful but confused why I'd keep it secret. I just knew how he'd react. Twisted into some story about how I was showing off while she was making something of herself. Meanwhile, I became the family safety net. 3 years ago, they hit a temporary rough patch with their mortgage. I stepped in, set up an account, started making payments. That temporary arrangement somehow became permanent. They stopped saying thanks, just expected it. I kept everything in my name, full control. Built up a buffer of around $52,000 just in case. I'm not an idiot. I set up a separate checking account specifically for their mortgage. Automatic transfers from my main account on the 25th of each month. $2.21247 for principal, interest, and escrow. I even had a spreadsheet tracking every payment, interest rate changes, and the remaining balance. Their 30-year fixed was at 4.125%. Nothing special, but it was the principle of the thing. I could have paid it off completely, but something told me to keep that leverage. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was how I really felt about bankrolling their lifestyle. They assumed I did it because I had easy money to throw around. Truth is, I was trying to buy something money couldn't get me, their actual respect. So when Father's Day rolled around this year, I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd hit some kind of turning point. I decided to host this whole Father's Day barbecue at my place. Not because I suddenly felt like celebrating the guy, but because I needed to see something for myself. One last test. Rented a tent, hired a bartender, got everything catered with his favorites. Dropped nearly $2.5K on the food, and set up alone. Megan flew in from Portland for the weekend, playing peacekeeper like always. "Just try to have a good day with him," she kept saying while helping me set up. "He's still our dad." Easy for her to say. She was always the golden child. Mom showed up early and started helping by rearranging everything I'd already set up. By the time guests arrived, she was telling everyone how she planned the whole thing and picked all his favorites. Whatever. The usual crowd showed up. My Uncle Rob, a couple of Dad's work buddies, some neighbors. Dad walked around like he was inspecting a construction site, pointing out the one dead plant in my garden, asking if I'd finally fixed that loose gutter on the north side of the house. I kept smiling, playing the good son, making sure drinks stayed full. Everyone was having a decent time. Mom was soaking it up like she planned the Super Bowl. Megan kept giving me these little thumbs up signs whenever Dad and I managed to have a 30-second conversation without it turning to crap. After dinner, when people were relaxed and the second round of drinks was flowing, I decided it was time. I'd been carrying the box in my pocket all day, feeling it press against my leg like a live grenade. I caught Dad alone by the edge of the yard, looking at my neighbor's new boat. "Got a minute?" I asked. He nodded, that same expressionless face he always had around me. "Wanted to give you this," I said, handing him the small box. "Happy Father's Day." He took it, turned it over, once opened it. The Rolex Submariner, Black Dial Classic, sat there gleaming. Cost me nearly $15,000. Had it engraved with "Thank you for everything." I'd spent 3 weeks researching the perfect watch, the kind of watch that says I made it. He stared at it for what felt like forever, then looked up at me. No smile, no surprise, nothing. "You think money can buy respect?" He finally said, voice flat. "You'll always be less than everyone else here, just like that. Like I was some stranger trying to bribe him for attention. Like I was nothing." I didn't speak, didn't need to, just reached over, took the box back and closed it, slipped it into my pocket. Then I turned and walked away. Straight through the yard, past Megan, who called my name, past my mother, who was mid-story with one of the neighbors, past the bartender who tried to offer me another drink. I got in my car and drove off without saying goodbye to anyone. In my rearview mirror, I could see Megan standing at the edge of the driveway looking confused. Dad hadn't even moved from his spot, still standing there looking at nothing. That night, I sat in my apartment staring at the watch box on my coffee table. The test was over. He'd failed spectacularly. All those years of trying to earn his respect, of helping them out of paying their freaking mortgage without them even acknowledging it. For what? So he could look me in the eye and tell me I'd always be less than everyone else. My phone started blowing up around 9 p.m. First Megan, then Mom, then even my uncle. I turned it off. I played the good son for the last time. I threw my last barbecue, paid my last bill. Tomorrow I'd show them exactly what happens when you push away the only person keeping your entire house of cards from collapsing. That was it. I was done playing nice, and they had no clue what I was about to do next. The next morning, 63 missed calls, 22 voicemails. Mom demanded I return the watch, the food, everything. Dad called me ungrateful, saying I embarrassed him in front of people who matter, that I was always trying to show off with my money. I played the messages on speaker while making coffee, sorting them into mental categories. Guilt trips, threats, fake concern, genuine confusion. That was just Megan. The most interesting was from Uncle Rob, who actually sounded worried that I'd made some kind of scene by just walking away quietly. Monday started normal. Coffee, laptop open, pretending to answer emails, while the weekend drama was hanging over me like a dark cloud. Wasn't planning on doing anything crazy. Then I listened to this voicemail from my dad. He was using that calm voice he always uses right before he gets nasty. "You embarrass me in front of people who really matter. If you think you can just throw money around and rewrite who you are in this family, you're more pathetic than I thought." That was it, the tipping point. See, what they didn't know was that I'd been quietly paying their mortgage for years. It started as a 6-month favor during a rough patch, but somehow turned permanent. They stopped asking how it got paid. They stopped even pretending to be grateful. What they really didn't know: I kept everything in my name, full control. I'd even built up a buffer over the years, like $52,000 just sitting there, ready to cover almost a year's worth of payments if anything went south. That morning, I pulled it all out, transferred the whole $52,000 to my personal account in one go. I logged into the mortgage account, First National Midwest Bank, a real dinosaur of an interface that hadn't been updated since 2010. I'd set up the payment portal to autopay from my special account, categorized as family expense, in my personal bookkeeping system. 2 clicks to cancel the autopay. 3 more to remove my name as an authorized payer on the account. Then a call to the mortgage company to make sure they understood. The call took 12 minutes. The guy asked if I was sure, offered to connect me with their retention team. No, I told him, I'm just no longer responsible for the payments. Let the original borrowers figure it out now. By late afternoon, my mom had found out. Her texts went from confused to pissed to something I hadn't heard from her in a long time. Fear. You weren't really going to let them take the house. One message said I didn't answer. Went for a walk. Came back to 4 voicemails from my uncle, 1 from Megan, and an email from my dad with the subject line, "We need to talk." Didn't even open it. Instead, I opened my special folder. Inside were subfolders organized by year, each containing bank statements, transfer records, and screenshots of text messages where they'd asked for money. 3 years of documented financial support with never a single thank you that wasn't immediately followed by another request. The next day at 8 a.m., someone buzzed my apartment. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, knock on the door, checked the peephole. It was my mother. I watched her stand there calling my name for 25 minutes. She left a note. I tossed it without reading. For the rest of the day, I worked from home, set up a new filtering rule in my email to send anything from my parents' email addresses to a special folder I wouldn't have to look at. Called the property management company for my building to inform them that I wasn't accepting visitors unless I specifically cleared them first. That night, another knock. 2 short ones. Thought it might be Mom again or maybe Megan. Nope. It was this guy who looked like he used to work security at a strip mall. Black jacket, gray pants. He just stared at me for a second and said, "Your dad sends his regards," then walked away. No threats, just a message. I'd installed a doorbell camera after the first unwanted visit. I saved the footage and license plate from my Ring cam. Next morning, I noticed fresh marks on my lock like someone tried to pick it but wasn't in a hurry. My neighbor, older dude, super nosy, told me he saw someone asking what time I usually get home. Said the guy wasn't friendly. I filed a police report that afternoon, listed everything the visit, the damaged lock, but I added one thing at the end that changed everything. I told the officer the name of the man I'd seen. It wasn't a guess. I recognized him from the Father's Day barbecue. He wasn't just some random guy. He was one of those work friends everyone thought was just there to wish him well. Barely said a word, just drank whiskey the whole time. Vincent, I think his name was. The officer typed everything into his tablet, not really reacting until I mentioned the name. He paused, looked up at me. "Vincent Kruger," he asked. "That sounds right," I said. "Balding guy, maybe 50, always looks like he's deciding whether to punch you." The officer nodded slowly. "I'm going to need to see that doorbell footage." I pulled it up on my phone, showed him the clips. He took his own screenshots and asked for the originals to be emailed. "You know this guy?" I asked. "Let's just say Mr. Kruger's name comes up from time to time," the officer said. Not always in a good way. Turns out this Vincent dude was a licensed private investigator until a few years back. Now working in that gray area, hired by people who don't want questions asked. The cop wouldn't say it directly, but his tone made it clear. He'd seen guys like this before, used by people trying to scare family members into line. The implication: my dad paid him to rattle me, dig around in my life, and maybe worse. But the part that really lit the fuse: he'd already visited my ex Natalie. We hadn't talked in over a year. Things ended clean, no drama. She texted me around midnight after the police left. Said some guy claiming to be handling a family matter. Showed up at her office, asking if she knew about my finances. Asked about my mental health, if I'd ever talked about hurting someone, if I'd ever mentioned doing anything crazy with money. I called her immediately, and she picked up on the first ring. "What exactly did he say?" I asked. "He said he was looking into a family matter for your dad," she explained. Started off asking normal stuff, how long we dated when we broke up. Then it got weird. He wanted to know if you ever talked about your family's money. If you seemed obsessed with your dad. If you ever seemed unstable. "What did you tell him?" "I shut him down, told him you were stable and he had no business asking," she said. "Did he give you a card or anything?" "No, but I took a picture of him leaving the building and I got the license plate of his car." She texted the images while we were still talking. Same guy, same Dodge Charger. At first she thought he was a debt collector until he dropped my father's full name. That's when it all clicked. Dad wasn't just angry. He was planning something. Maybe not a lawsuit, but something worse. He was setting me up, trying to paint me as unstable, reckless, someone people shouldn't trust. And the best part, he underestimated how much I knew. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened this file I'd kept buried for years. A digital folder called Just In Case. Not on my regular drive, but on an encrypted external SSD that I kept in a fireproof box. I'm not paranoid, just cautious. When you work in enterprise security, you learn to keep backups of anything important. The folder contains screenshots, emails, financial records, stuff I saved in case they ever pulled something like this. Not because I planned to use it, but because I knew someday I might need to. Like emails between my dad and Marcus, his business partner, scheming shady tax write-offs, scans of checks my mom deposited into her personal account from funds that weren't supposed to touch her name. Sketchy enough to get them audited, blacklisted, or worse. I had copies of emails from 2018 where Dad and Marcus discussed categorizing personal expenses as business deductions. A family vacation to Scottsdale filed as a professional development retreat. Kitchen renovations listed as home office improvements. Small stuff individually, but it added up to a pattern of systematic tax misrepresentation. And then there was my grandfather's trust. So my grandfather had left this substantial trust fund for Megan and me. The clause was specific. It would be split 50-50 when we turned 30 unless one of us was demonstrated unfit to manage the funds. The trust held $850,000 split equally between us, locked until we turned 30, except for education, medical emergencies, or first-time home purchases. What nobody knew, not even Megan, was that after our grandfather died, I was named temporary trustee. Temporary power that was supposed to be transferred to a third party eventually. There was supposed to be a formal handover to the bank's trust department 6 months after Grandpa's death, but nobody ever filed the paperwork. Nobody ever changed it. I was still in charge. I never touched it. Didn't need to. But when I started going through the statements, I noticed something was off. Megan's half should have been intact just sitting there. It wasn't. Nearly $145,000 had been moved over a 3-year period, not outright, but disguised as administrative expenses. Invoices from companies that didn't exist. Even donations to charities with suspiciously blank websites. The work was sloppy AF. Took me like 2 hours to trace exactly where the money went. Every single trail led back to my parents. They'd been siphoning off Megan's inheritance to support their lifestyle mortgage car upgrades, even a failed house-flipping scheme that tanked in 2021. The transaction logs told the whole story. Transfers to an LLC called Summit Educational Initiatives for tuition assistance. $22,500 in 2019, $27,800 in 2020. $31,000 in 2021-2022. Except Summit Educational Initiatives wasn't a real company. Its listed address was a UPS store mailbox, and its EIN was registered to Surprise Marcus's home address. From there, the money moved to another entity, Family Capital Management, which just happened to have my father as the sole signatory. And from that account, it went straight to their personal checking credit card payments. And here's the best part. Payments on a vacation property in Sedona, they never mentioned to either of us. They didn't just steal from me, they stole from their daughter, the one who still answered when they called. I organized it all clean, easy to read with backups, screenshots, transaction logs, dates, packaged it all into a clean PDF with receipts, sent it all to Megan. She called in less than 20 minutes. I picked up expecting tears or denial. She didn't cry, didn't yell, just waited, then said, "They stole from me." "Yes, and they tried to ruin you. Looks like it. Then, let's burn it down." I told her I'd handle the rest, but I wasn't ready for what she did next. The next morning, she flew in without telling anyone. Showed up at my apartment with a duffel bag and a folder full of her own receipts. Turned out she'd been collecting evidence too. Just never thought she'd use it. "I thought I was crazy," she said, spreading her documents across my dining table. "All these years, I thought I was just bad with money or forgetting things." Her evidence was different but complementary to mine. Things like texts from Mom asking her to lie to a bank teller about the source of deposits. Dad's emails about needing access to her accounts while she was in nursing school just to help manage things. Most damning, a loan application for her first apartment where Dad had forged her signature as guarantor on a separate line of credit. She'd found out 6 months later when collections called her about missed payments on a card she'd never applied for. That same day, I sent a copy of the entire file to my parents' accountant. Not to threaten, to warn, because what was coming next wasn't going to be quiet. 2 days of silence after I sent that file to their accountant. Not a text, not a call, nothing. I imagined their reactions 100 different ways. Denial, panic, rage, but nothing prepared me for what actually happened. Day 3, I got an email. Not from them, from their lawyer. Short and sweet. My clients request an immediate cease and desist. Any further distribution of private financial information will be considered a criminal offense. This is your only warning. No signature, no official letterhead, nothing about trying to talk it out, just the legal threat. Thinly veiled and hastily written. First sign they were losing control. I forwarded it to my own lawyer, a guy named Vance who specialized in financial crimes. He'd handled security breaches for my clients before. His response came within 15 minutes. "This is bluster. They're hoping to scare you. They know they're exposed, but they think you won't push further." I forwarded it to Megan. She didn't respond with words. Just a photo. The outside of our parents' house taken from the street with a big red sign staked in the lawn. Foreclosure notice dated that morning. They thought I was bluffing. The mortgage company had moved faster than I expected. My guess is they were already in default before I pulled my money. The payments I'd been making, $2,124.70 every month, were just keeping the wolves at bay. My funds had just been buying them time. And when that stopped, the clock ran out. No savings to keep them afloat. No backup plan. The house they used to lecture me from gone. But what really broke me, what happened that same afternoon Megan went to the house, didn't tell me until after. Probably because she knew I would have tried to stop her. She knocked. Mom answered. Megan said our mom just stood there in total silence for almost a full minute, like she couldn't decide whether to hug her or slap her. Then Dad appeared behind her and just stared like Megan was a ghost. Finally, he spoke. "You're as worthless as he is." Megan didn't flinch. She handed him a copy of the trust records, pointed to the bottom line, and asked, "How do you think this ends?" Dad's face went blank like someone flipped a switch. Then unexpectedly he sat down. Didn't yell or argue. Just sat there muttering about how he built everything from nothing. How we didn't understand pressure. How we were spoiled and ungrateful. Should have been the end of it. But that night someone broke into my car. They didn't touch anything. Just left a message in an envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Me taken from across the street leaving my apartment 2 days earlier. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize. 3 words. "You went too far." I documented everything before touching it. Took photos of the envelope's placement on the passenger seat, the car door that showed subtle tool marks around the lock, the photo itself held by the edges. Then I called the police again, the same officer. He showed up in 20 minutes, took the photo in an evidence bag, and asked me bluntly, "You got somewhere else you can stay for a few days?" I called Megan, told her I was going out of town for a few days laying low. She didn't hesitate, said she'd do the same. We both knew what it meant. This wasn't just about money or respect or revenge anymore. It had become something else. And whatever my parents were planning now, it wouldn't be legal. I left town that night, packed a bag, turned off my phone, and drove north. Didn't tell anyone where. Megan and I agreed to disappear for a few days, let things cool off, or at least give them enough quiet to get nervous. I checked into a Hilton Garden in 3 hours away, paying cash, and using my backup credit card, the one not connected to my normal accounts. It's not paranoia if they're actually after you. When your enemies don't know what you're doing, they start making mistakes. I came back 3 days later. My apartment hadn't been touched. Building security cameras showed nobody near my door since I left. The footage was grainy but clear enough. 48-hour continuous monitoring with no suspicious activity. But that didn't reassure me. I knew my father. This wouldn't be loud. He would try to ruin my life quietly, surgically, in pieces. So I moved first. Remember the trust fund. What my parents didn't know was that I'd already talked to a lawyer specializing in financial crimes and embezzlement. Not just Vance, but a whole team of estate specialists, forensic accountants, even a private investigator who did things by the book. Megan and I signed everything together during a 3-hour meeting at the law firm's conference room. We provided full access to our accounts, signed affidavit about our knowledge of the trust, and granted power of attorney for specific legal actions. The moment she saw the money was gone, she gave me full permission to act. Within 48 hours, the attorney filed an official complaint with the state. We submitted full documentation, forgeries, unauthorized transactions, fake invoice trails, even signatures my mother tried to forge. Megan had a forensic handwriting expert confirm it. Airtight, the complaint was 47 pages long. It detailed 16 separate instances of financial fraud, 9 cases of identity theft, and 11 counts of misappropriation of trust funds. Each allegation referenced specific exhibits, over 200 pages of supporting evidence, all meticulously indexed and annotated. But that wasn't the best part. The house was already in foreclosure, but they hadn't moved out yet. They thought they had time. So I pulled the final string, called the HOA president in their neighborhood, pretended to be a prospective buyer with neighborhood reputation. Concerns casually mentioned some strange financial activity involving a property on their street, hinted at a possible investigation. Didn't name names, just planted the idea. "I'm looking at a property on Lakeside Drive," I said. "But I've heard some rumors about financial issues with one of the current homeowners, something about a trust fund and irregular activities. I'd hate to buy into a neighborhood where that's happening." The HOA president, a retired HR director named Gary, who lived for this kind of gossip, practically salivated through the phone. "Which property exactly?" he asked, not even trying to hide his interest. "I'd rather not say," I replied. "It's just concerning when you're making such a large investment." 2 days later, they were hit with a formal request from the board. The HOA sent a certified letter requesting an appearance at the next board meeting to address concerns about activities that may impact neighborhood property values. I knew because Megan still had access to their mail forwarding. I knew they'd panic. They cared more about status than anything, more than family, more than money. To have their financial dirt leak out into the community that would crush them. The next day, Megan called. Said Dad had tried calling her twice, then left a message. He wasn't yelling, he was begging. Said they were losing everything, that they were being humiliated, that people were whispering that they needed help. Megan didn't answer, just sent me the voicemail. Word began spreading among their friends and neighbors, not because of anything I did publicly, but because that's how small communities work. People notice foreclosure signs. They see strange men visiting houses. They hear arguments through open windows. They whisper at grocery stores. My parents were suddenly the subject of quiet conversations at neighborhood gatherings. Former friends stopped calling. Invitations dried up. The quiet social death that terrified them more than anything else. The next morning, my mom called for the first time in weeks. She cried, said they were being watched, said they'd lost everything. "We just need a little help to get back on our feet," she sobbed. "Your father is devastated. He can't even look people in the eye anymore. Please, we're your parents." I let her finish. Then I told her the truth. I wasn't done yet. That evening, Dad called from a number I didn't recognize. His voice was different, hollow, defeated. "Look, I know I've been hard on you," he said, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Maybe too hard, but we raised you. We gave you everything. How could you do this to us? We're sleeping on Marcus's couch right now. The same Marcus you did those sketchy tax write-offs with?" I asked. Silence. "Please," he finally said. "We can work something out. I'm sorry about the watch. I was jealous." "Okay, is that what you want to hear?" I was jealous of my own son. For a second, I almost felt something. Then I remembered Vincent showing up at my door. The marks on my lock, the photo in my car. "Did you send someone to threaten me?" I asked. "What?" "No, that's not Vincent was just supposed to talk to you. And Natalie, was he supposed to talk to her too?" Another pause. "I was worried about you. I thought she might know if you were okay. You were digging for dirt." "Look, I made mistakes," he said, his voice cracking. "We both did. But we're your parents. You can't just walk away. People are talking. The bank is taking the house. Your mother can't stop crying. We need your help. Just a loan to get us back on our feet. We'll pay you back. I swear." I almost laughed. "Like Megan's trust fund, the one you were supposed to pay back." "That was different," he whispered. "No, it wasn't. You took what wasn't yours because you thought you deserved it. You lied, you stole, you threatened, and now you want me to bail you out so you can go back to treating me like garbage while I fund your lifestyle. Please," he said, "I'll do anything. We can start over. I'll be different." This time I did laugh. "You've been the same person for 61 years. You're not changing now." After that, the silence became deafening. No more visits, no more threatening envelopes. My parents disappeared from social circles, canceled accounts, stopped attending community events, rarely left the house. I knew what that meant: damage control. But the problem with hiding is that when people can't find you, they start looking harder. And in a tight-knit community, people notice everything. While all this was snowballing, Megan found something else we'd overlooked. A second escrow account hidden under a shell LLC set up 3 years ago, tied to a business name nobody in the family had heard of. It technically had my father's name on it, but listed Megan and me as legacy stakeholders. She discovered it while going through old tax returns. There was a Schedule K-1 listing partnership income from an entity called Heritage Future Planning LLC that showed minimal activity, just enough to exist legally without raising flags. When we ran the name through the state business registry, we found it was created exactly 1 month after my grandfather died with $1,000 in initial capital. The registered agent was a formation service in Wyoming known for privacy protection, but the mailing address for correspondence matched a P.O. box my father had kept for years. Our lawyer explained what legacy stakeholders really meant. Turned out the second account was his stash spot. He pulled money from the trust, funneled it through some sham LLC, and tucked it away like a bunker. There was still $92,000 in there. We froze it. Our attorney filed an emergency motion to freeze all assets associated with the LLC, citing the ongoing investigation into trust fraud. The judge granted it within hours. The bank placed a hold on the account the same day, locking down every penny. That night, Megan texted me. "You should hear this." She forwarded a voice message from a burner number. It was Dad. He sounded off, slurred, like he'd been drinking. He rambled about mistakes, about how we didn't understand what he was trying to protect. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "I know you think you're winning, but I'm not the only one who knows things." That stayed with me. I replayed it 10 times. Something in his voice wasn't just defeat. It was fear. The next morning, a woman named Rachel showed up at my office. Mid-4s, sharp voice, wore glasses too big for her face. Said she worked with my dad years ago. Said she had something I needed to see. I didn't let her in. We went to a coffee shop down the street. I chose a table in the corner with my back to the wall. Full view of the exits. Old habits. She slid a flash drive across the table. He made copies of everything she said. Bank stuff, your mother's accounts, and something else. What? She looked around and whispered. Insurance policies. Old ones. The kind that pay out when someone disappears. I left without finishing my coffee. At home, I opened the files. Scanned copies of policies from the early 2000s. One had my name, another had Megan's, the beneficiaries, my mother and father. And in the notes section of one, someone had handwritten untraceable if overseas. The policies were substantial. $750,000 on me, $500,000 on Megan. Both through a carrier I'd never heard of based in the Cayman Islands. Both with double indemnity clauses for accidental death or disappearance. Both with explicit statements waiving investigation requirements beyond local police reports. The blood drained from my face. This wasn't just greed anymore. This wasn't just humiliation or revenge or theft of inheritance. This was darker. They had plans, backup plans. Then I remembered a trip they took in 2019 to Costa Rica, supposed to be a vacation. They stayed an extra 3 weeks. No explanation, just silence. At the time, I thought they were trying to fix their marriage. Now I wasn't so sure. I pulled up my archived emails searching for anything about that trip. Found a thread where Mom had mentioned meeting with financial advisors, while there said something about international estate planning opportunities that sounded rehearsed, like she was repeating something she'd been told to say that night. I called Megan. We were never just insurance. I said we were the exit strategy. She didn't argue because she knew they never planned to give us anything they were planning to leave. I couldn't sleep after that. Kept thinking about that policy about Costa Rica, about that strange comment in the voicemail. I'm not the only one who knows things. My mind went to dark places. Did they ever seriously consider it cashing in, pretending starting over? I didn't want to believe it, but at that point, I didn't trust them to water a plant, let alone value someone's life over a payout. I met with our attorney again the next morning, handed over the flash drive, went over the insurance documents. Vance examined them carefully, occasionally making notes, his expression growing grimmer with each page. These are technically legal, he finally said, but they're structured in a way that raises serious red flags. The beneficiary arrangement combined with these specific clauses? He shook his head. We need to get these frozen immediately. He started the process of legally freezing all the policies, filing emergency motions with courts in 3 jurisdictions, called in favors from colleagues who specialized in international insurance law, set up a conference call with regulatory authorities. He also pointed out something unexpected. The theft of trust combined with the potential fraud and harassment was enough to warrant full criminal charges. We have enough evidence to pursue criminal fraud charges, he explained, organizing the documents into neat piles. Wire fraud, identity theft, misappropriation of fiduciary funds. These aren't minor infractions. They're looking at potential felonies. We didn't press charges. Not yet. We gave them a deadline. It wasn't about money anymore. Megan and I didn't need it. We wanted a clean break. No house, no apology, no vague Christmas calls asking for help. Just the legal, documented, irreversible end. The terms were simple. Relinquish all access to both trust accounts. Provide signed affidavit admitting financial wrongdoing. Leave the state for good. No calls, no emails, no threats. We drew up the paperwork. 17 pages of legal documents detailing exactly what they'd done and what they needed to do. Comprehensive releases of all claims to the trusts, notarized admissions of the fraudulent transfers, a binding non-cont. Agreement with liquidated damages of $50,000 per violation. We gave them 7 days. On the 4th day, my phone rang. It was my father again. This time, his voice was different. Desperate, broken. We have nothing left, he said. We're staying with your mother's sister. Nobody will talk to us. The HOA is spreading rumors. We're done. I said nothing. Please, he begged. Just let us keep a little. We're your parents. No, I replied. Parents don't do what you did. Sign the papers by tomorrow, then leave. I don't want to see or hear from either of you again. There was a pause. Then Mother's sobbing. She'd been listening the whole time. You're killing us, she cried. After everything we did for you, I hung up. The next day, they signed everything in defeat. All 17 pages notarized and witnessed by Vance's paralegal who drove out to meet them. They signed over remaining rights to the trust, acknowledged the fraud, agreed to the non-cont order. The final document was an affidavit confirming they would leave the state within 30 days and not return. In exchange, we didn't press criminal charges, didn't pursue additional civil penalties, didn't expose them to their remaining friends, just cut them off completely. I haven't heard from them since. Last I checked, they left the state. The HOA fined them for disrupting the community. Their names no longer appear on any escrow documents. Their accountant dropped them. Vance's investigator confirmed they'd moved to Arizona, some small town outside Phoenix where housing was cheap. Living in a rented condo, driving a 10-year-old car instead of dad's precious SUV, working part-time jobs, keeping low profiles. No social media, no community involvement, just existing. And me, I donated the Rolex. Quietly just gone. Because in the end, it wasn't about proving a point. It was about cutting the cord they thought they had wrapped around my neck. And when it snapped, it was silent, permanent, just the way it had to be. Update. Hey Reddit. So it's been almost a year since everything went down. Wasn't planning on updating, but some stuff happened recently that made me think it was time. First, I got a letter, an actual handwritten letter, in an envelope with no return address, postmarked from Idaho. I knew the handwriting. My mother's, just 2 pages. First half was the usual guilt trip language about how they only did what they thought was necessary. How they never stopped loving us even when we became strangers. Didn't even finish reading it. But the second page was different. It said, "Your father didn't tell you what he did with the rest." That line stuck with me. What rest? I thought, the hell does that even mean? I did some checking. Contact our lawyer again. Turns out there is a third account offshore. Not in her name directly, but tied to the same shell company used in the trust siphoning. No money in it anymore, but it existed. Vance traced it through banking records. An account in the Caymans established in 2017, funded with 6 transfers totaling approximately $178,000 from the Shell LLC. The money had been withdrawn over several months in early 2022, right around when our investigation started heating up. Cash withdrawals mostly. Untraceable, which means there could be more. The investigator found evidence of 3 more LLCs, all registered in different states, all using variations of the same naming convention. Heritage Planning Ventures in Nevada, Family Legacy Solutions in Delaware, Generational Asset Protection in Wyoming, each with minimal paper trails, each potentially hiding more funds. Megan and I talked about it. For now, we're letting it go. We're not chasing it anymore. Some things aren't worth tearing apart, especially when the people behind them are already living like ghosts. I haven't heard from either of them since. Meanwhile, Megan and I rebuilt our relationship. Not the superficial one we had when we were trying to please our parents, but something real. We meet for dinner once a month, talk about work life, whatever. No more drama, no more guilt, and no more family legacy. The trust has been restructured under a proper financial institution. Our shares are growing steadily. As for me, I've moved on. New apartment, new security system, new outlook.